Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Vijay. I am the CEO and founder of Superfluid Labs. And if you want to know how that relates to Superfluid and all that other stuff, please find me afterwards. I'm not going to talk about it here. So the title of this presentation is Unfucking Incentives. And the reason that it's called Unfucking Incentives is because the incentives are fucked. To get started, all of us, I think, here know that incentives are a critical part of how we think about crypto and its essential value add as a kind of technology category. And so, I think it's important to address some of the ways in which we are deeply far from the promise in several different categories. Fixing retention outcomes for airdrops and grants. Wow, these slides are... This is not how these slides are supposed to look, so I'll just have to work around it. So what's so fucked up anyway? All right, there's supposed to be a big picture here, and the big picture is this like kind of gothic illustration of Moloch. Maybe it actually as a sort of intro question, how many people here have read Meditations on Moloch? All right, only one hand. So in my sort of like intro to crypto, it was one of the canon reads, and I really recommend anyone out here in the audience who hasn't goes and reads it. It's by a guy called Scott Alexander, otherwise known as Slate Star Codex. And this sort of, this essay is really interesting because it basically paints a bunch of scenarios which sort of, describe the ways that individuals and groups set up systems that fail so catastrophically that it's easier for us to interpret, the catastrophic failure as having some sort of agent itself, a demon called Moloch in this case, rather than understand intrinsically that the system itself is at fault. And this is kind of like a problem that can be mapped to lots of different areas. Things like arms races, environmental collapse, and all these things that we are experiencing today in crypto. And really, this is a way of sort of saying that like many of the systems that we've built up around tokens, around token distribution today are so messed up that they lead to terribly unoptimal outcomes. And it's only by looking at the essential system itself that we've set up, taking a mirror to it, that we can think about, the ways that we can fix that. So, a few of the different categories in which I think we can observe how messed up it is today. Like most token launches paint the chart red. We've all seen kind of the meme chart, the token that launches with a massive day one valuation, crashes immediately, never recovers. The team are wrecked, have to keep working on it for how many years, and no one is happy from, aside from maybe a few early investors who cashed out early. The second thing is that there's really no reward for conviction. Like if you find a project out there that you actually feel deeply, personally passionate about, you get stuck in and you think, like I want to be a part of this community. I want to build in this community. I'm a deep day one user of this product. Like there is no reward for you sticking around when the chart's going to look that bad. Like you don't get sort of financially compensated. You don't get extra rewards, all these kind of things. Like people do a one-day airdrop and then that's it. That's the end of their relationship with you. And I think at the root of all of this is this idea of fake metrics and fake success. People have in their head, these quite exotic ideas of what kind of user numbers, what kind of FTVs for their tokens are realistic and reasonable. And everyone will sort of point every possible mechanic at their disposal to achieving these outcomes. But these aren't the essential outcomes of any kind of crypto project. These aren't PMF. These aren't the impacts that you want to achieve. These are just kind of wrapping paper. All right, so how can we improve? Like number one area of improvement is to be more honest. I think like if you take a long, hard look in the mirror and you think about what kind of impact you want to achieve, then it's never these things. Like it's never basically buying fans and users with a massive day one airdrop. Your airdrop gets farmed. Like essentially you have this one opportunity then in a single time airdrop to reward the right people. And if you get it wrong, then you're screwed over forever. There's no recovery from that amount of capital allocation. And I think those of us who've sort of spent time outside of Web3 will know that like if you sort of matched up the spend that you make on those kind of airdrops against the lifetime value of those users, the number of users you acquire, most of you would never work in marketing again if you sort of achieved those levels of failure. Day one FTV, I think many people out there have this idea in mind that they want to be included in the top 100, top 200 tokens. Realistically, so many of these tokens are being launched, pre-product market fit and maybe even pre-product. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. I think one of the really interesting use cases of crypto is capital allocation and capital accumulation. But fundamentally, if you're chasing an FTV that maps to a significantly larger project with more history and certainly projects that have a lot more product market fit, then it's an unrealistic expectation. And then the last one, I think, is sort of dunking on your competitors. We've all seen people, compare, metric for metric against their competitors, like the number of wallets that were on your testnet, the number of wallets that were on their testnet, like the number of transactions per second, the total amount of TVL that they bought. All of these things are so unrealistic that, seeing people shit-slinging on the timeline between their various different, totally unrealistic metrics is starting to become a meme, and I think we all have to call it out where it comes up. Again, these slides are super messed up, so this is not how it's supposed to look. Cool, I think I've done that. And I think when we sort of boil down to a fundamental, reason why, and since I gave a similar talk in Denver, this has pretty much been the end result of all these conversations, is that people are chasing the same things. People are chasing CX listings, where we know CX require very specific target numbers of users that are achieved by pretty much no one in crypto without a lot of fudging of numbers. VC money, again, venture capitalists, very reasonably trying to compare like for like, but when all of your competitors are showing you fake data, then realistically, your only choice to raise money is to propose the same data or better for your own product, and it's a kind of arms race. And the last thing I think is dumping on retail. We've all seen this, the amount of shady backroom deals that go on with tokens and sort of, circulate, I think, around day one launches and all this kind of stuff. I think it still needs a significant amount of more calling out and more shining a light on it for us to kind of really move past it. And I think ultimately, the sort of secondary point here is don't be lazy. If you are a well-meaning founder, a builder who has kind of a long-term perspective on what you're trying to achieve, and you really want to drive impact, then what you should be doing is thinking about, what does it look like past day one? So a few things that I would sort of propose people take a really hard look at. The first one is to choose better metrics. What gets measured gets optimized. You should never be celebrating the amount of value, the amount of money that you've paid out. You should never sort of be celebrating TVL incentives alone, because it is the easiest and most measurable metric, but it's also the most easily gamified. There is an entire sort of stack of tooling built around acquiring users, like mercenary users, people acquiring mercenary TVL. That ceases to be a useful metric at the point at which there is an industry out there ready to supply you for it. What you should really be chasing is the one core metric for you and your product that actually measures product market fit. The second thing I think is transparency. One of the ways that people really get around exploiting users for their time and attention, and really, I think the market, is this idea that people have expectations about rewards and airdrops, and what kind of an allocation certain activities and behaviors are going to achieve. And fundamentally, I think that abusing these behaviors, these speculative sort of behaviors of end users, without giving transparency about the kinds of things you're going to reward up front and the kind of behaviors you want to incentivize. Again, maybe by focusing on a one core metric that actually is your end impact goal, then we can achieve a lot more by being transparent. And finally, I want to get people sort of their heads around the idea of programmatic rewards. So there are quite a few teams now who are moving in this dimension. I think you'll have seen people like Optimism doing a very advanced version of it, and Eigenlayer, obviously. But the idea of a sort of one-time, retroactive airdrop for all of your users to set up your ecosystem forever, I think is completely misguided. It's not rewards don't work this way for retention, and that's what we can see on all those charts. The more times you give yourself basically to kind of distribute rewards and incentives to end users, the more opportunities you give yourself to succeed. The more you learn about your end users, the more you can tune and optimize for a better outcome. And so, is that it? Is that how simple it is? Wow. Okay, none of these slides are working. I'm gonna have to talk over them. So I think all of us can probably agree on the fundamental, which is that like the best reward system you could possibly design would be based on real impact metrics for your protocol, for your business. It would be transparent, and it would probably be fully on-chain. After all, that is what we're building here. And then last of all, I think it would be recurring and programmatic, over time, over an extended period of time, where you can learn and iterate on your, your learnings and your mistakes. And fundamentally, that is what money streaming is about. So yeah, feel free to catch me afterwards if you want to learn more about Superfluid. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions, by the way? Thank you very much.